After the destruction of the second Death Star and the deaths of both Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader, the galaxy looked to Luke Skywalker as their last hope. In the minds of many, he was the only Jedi left. After the Great Purge and 20 years of Palpatine's heavy-handed Imperial rule, Jedi sightings were few and far between, which added credibility to the belief that Luke was the last. But however enchanting the legends of Luke Skywalker were, he knew he wasn't the only one. There were others out there. Whether they were fallen Jedi like Luke's future partner, Kam Solusar, or Force adepts waiting to be trained like the natives of Ossus, the galaxy was teeming with Force users ready to resurrect the Order. Still, one thing was certain. In the absence of Darth Sidious and his apprentice Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker might have been the strongest Force user alive. 6 years after the destruction of the second Death Star, Luke had grown exponentially more powerful in the Force. In his younger days, he struggled to stack stones on the swamp world of Dagobah, and at other times he could barely muster the strength to lift his own body weight using the Force. But by the time the Imperial Civil War broke out, Skywalker was even more powerful than his father, Darth Vader. On one particular mission, while two warring factions of the Empire were deep in battle, Skywalker showed just how powerful he was. Just a few days prior, General Lando Calrissian and Luke Skywalker had crash-landed onto the planet. It was Han and Leia's job to find them. After deftly flying through heavy anti-aircraft fire and taking down an Imperial walker or two, Solo and Leia managed to find the last known whereabouts of Luke. When they disembarked the Millennium Falcon, they quickly found Lando, who was taking cover with his New Republic allies behind a ring of metal scraps. After a brief reunion, the former rebels turned towards the Falcon, hoping to get off the planet as quickly as possible, but they were blocked. A group of junk traders, armed with rifles and hot-wired weapons droids, descended onto the battlefield. They parked their massive armored vehicles between the Republic allies and the Millennium Falcon. With dozens of powerful war droids and a pack of cybernetically enhanced hunting necks, Leia, Han, and Lando struggled to defend themselves. Leia used her mastery of the Force to sow confusion within the Junkers, while Han dropped to his knees, making a small target and shot at the wave of enemies. But suddenly, a giant black shadow emerged from a hole in the hull of a downed starship. Reaching out with a single black cybernetic hand, it summoned the Force to collapse the circuits within the powerful war droids' chests. As the shadow drew closer to the Republic heroes, it pulled down its black cloak, and a familiar face smiled to greet them. It was Luke. With no effort at all, he had completely destroyed the Junkers' forces. As the surviving members turned away and fled aboard their armored vehicle, an Imperial AT-AT turned away from the battle to see what the commotion was about. Although the Imperial army was divided and they were fighting themselves in a bloody civil war, the death of the New Republic's heroes took precedence. As this AT-AT prepared to fire, it turned its head slightly down towards the small, cloaked figure standing before it. Luke looked up and ignited his lightsaber, and his entire body seemed to glow with the power of the Force. The battlefield grew quiet, an eerie precursor for the chaos that was about to erupt. Suddenly, with a thunderous roar, the Imperial Walker's forward cannon set a volley directly at Luke, but with his slender lightsaber outstretched to the side, Luke deflected the heavy bolts at the AT-AT's control center. Afraid to fire anymore, the Imperial soldiers sat still behind the controls, and Luke, without a moment's hesitation, simply pushed the massive war machine over with a wave of the Force. A single Imperial Walker was strong enough to enforce the Emperor's will when occupying less advanced planets in the galaxy, and even against sophisticated enemies, only a handful of AT-ATs were needed to defeat them, as the rebels found out during the Battle of Hoth. It's almost inconceivable that a single man, no matter how strong they were in the Force, would be powerful enough to take on one by himself. Now, to be fair, the powers of both Jedi and Sith in Legends is somewhat kind of misleading. They're really far-fetched, especially compared to the movies. They're essentially just comic book powers. The writers never really agree on what the actual limits of powers were in the expanded universe, and they always love to one-up each other. It's definitely one thing I've noticed. So it's like Luke will go from, not being able to move rocks on Dagobah to essentially like walking on lava and, just moving over AT-ATs very easily with the Force. This is why some ancient Force users were able to move entire planets, even though the most powerful Jedi of the Galactic Civil War could only lift X-Wings, for example. Comics are a different world of their own, but they're still really cool, and they still are canon, at least, that they used to be. Nevertheless, Luke Skywalker's Force skills 6 years after the fall of the second Death Star are extremely impressive, and it's no wonder that he would go later on to defeat the resurrected Emperor several times, especially when he started to clone himself in the comic run Dark Empire. Now, this was the Luke Skywalker that I was really hoping we would see in The Last Jedi. If he's defeated and all that, fine. But, he would eventually find himself and he would show up on Crate. And when he was going up against those massive walkers, I figured this would be just like Dark Empire, where Luke would deflect the blasts of these guerrilla walkers and essentially just destroy them. Maybe crush them with the Force, maybe take their legs off or something, not really sure. But whatever he would have done, it would have been pretty badass. However, of course, we got something completely different where he didn't showcase that power, but rather just showcased his ability to transfer himself in the Force as a hologram, as a means to peacefully subdue Kylo and defeat him within his own mind. So let me know in the comments, what do you wish we would have seen? Do you wish Luke showed up actually on Crate and would have destroyed the AT-ATs only to fight Kylo Ren and maybe knock him out and bring him back home or something to Leia? Or do you like the version that we got where Luke actually was just a hologram and he was just chilling on Ahch-To, and in the end, once he disappeared, he got so tired that he passed away? Anyways, let me know what you think. Hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching this video and have an awesome one. And until the next one, remember, the Force will be with you always.
Hey everyone, how are you all doing today? So today, let's talk about something pretty different and something I think is pretty cool. Luke Skywalker is by far one of the coolest characters in Star Wars, but let's be honest here, he's far from the most powerful Jedi that we've seen in the movies, with the possible exception of Force projecting himself across the galaxy in The Last Jedi. Basically, everyone else can do more than him. In the original trilogy, we saw Luke barely attain the rank of Jedi Knight and only got a glimpse of his powers since he didn't really develop most of them until after Return of the Jedi. In canon, we know what happened with him up through episode 8. But today, I want to take a look at Luke's most insane Legends Force powers and rank his top 14. Then you guys can decide if Legends or canon Luke is the most powerful. And in the comments, I want you to tell me which one is your all-time favorite, or if there's one that I didn't mention. Coming in at number 14. Freezing items and people in mid-air. We first saw this in canon in The Force Awakens when Kylo Ren froze the blaster bolt, and it was honestly pretty cool. So cool that Vader had to show him up in the fan film. But Luke was doing things like this long before Kylo, and his power here was actually far more powerful. We see this not in a battle, but when Luke stopped a food fight in the Jedi mess hall by freezing every person and thing in the room. He even froze single drops of liquid as they flew around. While freezing a single blaster bolt is awesome, freezing hundreds of small objects shows how in tune Luke was to the Force to have such perfect concentration. Number 13. Sensing other Force users. Similar to his ability to communicate with other Force users, Luke eventually became able to sense the presence of Force users around him. Basically, if another person who wielded the Force was in the presence of Luke, he would be able to feel their presence as well, and even be able to identify the person if he had encountered them before, kind of like how a dog sniffs stuff out. Granted, this isn't really an ability unique to Luke Skywalker, as Vader did it in A New Hope when Obi-Wan boarded the Death Star, and many other Jedi can do this too, but Luke's was pretty powerful. The ability doesn't just help Luke sense the Force, it also helps him identify the type of Force user. So essentially, if a dark side user tries to sneak up on Luke to attack him, he would know, thus foiling the surprise attack. Perhaps Luke would have been able to sense the Force in Palpatine when he was the Supreme Chancellor and hid his Force abilities from the Jedi Council. That would have solved a lot of problems, but then again, there were other things Palpatine was doing in Legends, such as hiding his powers, using the Sith Temple below the Jedi Temple, which is something else I can talk about in another video. With number 12, we have Force Light. At one point in Legends, when Luke was about to lose to a bunch of enemies, Luke used an incredibly rare Force power known as Force Light. This ability gave Luke a bright golden glow, freeing him from the arms of his enemy. The image itself is pretty cool to think about, but what's even cooler is what else it did. Force Light seriously heightened Luke's Force abilities and also diminished the powers of the dark side in any dark side user around him. In fact, it could be so powerful that it could permanently remove the dark side power from someone when Force Light was powerful enough. Coming in at number 11, we have Enhanced Force Dueling. Like most Jedi before and after him, Luke used a Force ability known as Force Speed in order to seriously enhance his dueling abilities. We saw this ability most clearly in the opening scene of The Phantom Menace as Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan ran down the hall in the droid-controlled ship at double speed. Luke took a different approach to this power and used it to slow down things to half speed around him. With the help of the Force Ghost of Obi-Wan, Luke learned how to seemingly slow down time for himself in a fight, giving himself more time to react to his opponent's movement. This became an incredibly useful skill for Luke, leading him to win every single lightsaber fight after he learned the skill. So this ability combined with the Force Speed made him a complete dueling legend. For number 10, we have Force Healing. At one point in Legends, Luke was fatally wounded after he was ambushed by a number of enemies. Despite the fatal wounds though, Luke was able to force heal himself in order to keep himself alive and was back on his feet within a few hours. So it's almost like Wolverine, but not quite as fast. Number 9, Communicating through the Force. This was an ability that we saw briefly in The Empire Strikes Back when Luke spoke to both Vader and Leia through the Force after his duel on Cloud City. Most have assumed that this was because he had a blood connection with both people, but in Legends, we see how powerful this skill became. After he went through more training and practice, Luke was eventually able to communicate with any Force user telepathically. Typically, we've only seen this ability used by Force ghosts, so the fact that Luke was able to pull it off was pretty remarkable. Luke then took things up to a new level in The Last Jedi by physically communicating with others through the Force, but that's a completely different ability, though they are in a way related. Number 8, Changing his appearance with the Force. In Legends, Luke was basically a galactic celebrity and everyone knew who he was, so wherever he went, people recognized him. Basically, that meant going on an undercover mission was pretty difficult. So one time, Luke had to use the Force to alter his physical appearance in order to disguise himself to rescue some kidnapped children. It was a brief trick that was only used for one time, yet it's still an incredibly cool ability. So Luke in Legends, from what we can see, is kind of like the X-Men. He's sort of like Mystique and Logan put into one. For number 7, we have Disabling and Overpowering Computer Technology. This is one of the weirdest out there, but could have spelt certain doom for Vader if Luke had learned this power earlier. Basically, Luke became a human lightning rod by causing himself to be repeatedly struck by lightning and charging himself up like a giant Energizer battery that could then shock and disable technological items, like prosthetic arms, computers, and other similarly structured systems. Essentially, had Luke learned this power earlier, he would have been able to defeat Darth Vader simply by disabling all 4 of his prosthetic limbs. This Force power also allows the wielder to boost the range of antennas and other technological forms of communication, which probably could have helped a lot at the end of The Last Jedi. With number 6, we have Becoming Unmovable. At one point during the Legends, Luke was confronted by a group of dark side users who attempted to overpower him using the Force. Instead of using Force Light against them, Luke used the Force to make himself unmovable, so their Force pushes had no effect on him. Luke did this by rooting himself in the Force, which apparently gave him the essence of an immovable object. No matter what Luke's enemies tried, they couldn't knock him down or push him back. It was said that not even a black hole could have moved Luke, as his connection to the Force was simply too powerful even for one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. In the number 5 slot, we've got Electric Judgement, and you've probably heard this one before from me. Basically, this is Force Lightning, but for light side users of the Force. In Legends, Luke used this power, or a variation of it, in an attempt to save his niece and nephew from the Slayers. His powerful version sent green sparks coursing over the body of a Slayer, instantly killing him and causing his body to convulse. It's pretty cool, and it's something I'm still waiting to see in one of the movies. And that's something that Mark Hamill said. He was hoping that in the sequel trilogy, he would have Force lightning just coming out of his ears. With number 4, we have Traveling into the Realms of the Force. The Force realm, known as Beyond Shadows, is a place where incredibly powerful Force users are able to travel to if they are able to completely leave their physical state behind. Luke traveled to this realm only once when he went to receive more knowledge, and ultimately ended up fighting and permanently defeating one of the most powerful darkside users of Legends. For reference, traveling beyond shadows is very much like Force projecting, though Luke is physically still in the normal universe. His mind and spirit are somewhere else entirely. It takes a great deal of power and concentration to pull off, which is why Luke is one of the few Jedi in history to travel there. Coming in at number 3, we have being one with the Force in life. Now, some Jedi become one with the Force after their life ends, like Obi-Wan and Yoda, who return as Force ghosts. Because of this, most people assume that you have to die first in order to become a Force ghost, but Luke apparently never heard those rules. At one point in Legends, Luke showed his intense connection with the Force by actually becoming completely one with the Force while still being alive and then returning to mortal form. He did this during a fight against an army of enemies, and everyone who witnessed it were in absolute awe towards Luke's abilities. His movements were swift and described to be without thought. It is the fighting style that nearly every Jedi sought to achieve, and Luke pulled it off seamlessly. So this is something I hope that happens in episode 8, that he actually didn't die, he just became one with the Force. But I don't know. I don't know if they're going to pull for that. We'll see. Number 2 may not be as most powerful on here, but it's definitely super cool. It's taking hold of a black hole. Earlier, it was mentioned that Luke was so strong with the Force that not even a black hole could move him. This ability takes that up to a new level, as Luke is so powerful that he can move a black hole with the Force. Luke once used this ability to save himself when he moved a black hole out of his path in order to not have his ship sucked into it. Not only that, he moved the black hole into the path of one of his pursuers, basically killing them in the most outrageous way possible. And now the moment you've all been waiting for. Coming in at number 1 isn't exactly the most powerful power he has, but when you hear it, you're going to understand why it's number 1. It is walking on lava. The power that Anakin needed more than anyone. So how did Luke do it? Once in Legends, to prove his incredible connection with the Force, Luke walked across lava. As he did it, people said he was throbbing with the Force, focusing on his connection as he walked to ensure that he didn't get a single burn on his body. In addition to this, Luke was also fighting a giant fireworm as he did this, which he beat because, he's Luke. Now, I'm just gonna say that if Luke didn't talk about this with his Force Ghost dad, then it's one of the greatest travesties of the entire Star Wars saga. So what do you guys think about it? I think it's pretty clear that Legends Luke was probably one of the most powerful beings ever in Star Wars, and definitely more powerful than canon Luke. But is this the Luke we actually would have wanted to see? My answer is yes. So while I totally want to see a powerful Jedi Luke, I also would like to ask myself and you guys if we want to see someone so powerful that we know he's always going to win. Would that take away some of the fun? Well, you guys can let me know down in the comments. Leave a like on this one if you enjoyed it. I loved making this one. There's some cool info in here, and I hope we, at least we'll get to see some of these powers someday in the movies. Until the next episode of Star Wars Theory, remember, the Force will be with you always.
Now, fulfill